Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be discussing about the taxonomic process. So in effect, there is no special theory lying behind modern taxonomic method. So the taxonomic methods depend on obtaining a suitable specimen, that is collecting, preserving and when necessary making special preparations. Secondly, comparing the specimen with the known variation with the known range of variation of living things. Thirdly, correctly identifying the specimen if it has been described or preparing a description showing similarities to and differences from known forms. Or if the specimen is new, naming it according to internationally recognized codes of nomenclature, determining the best position for the specimen in existing classifications, and determining what revision the classification may require as a consequence of the new discovery. And fifth, using available evidence to suggest the cause of the specimen's evolution. So, prerequisite to these two activities, we are going to have there is a recognized system of ranking, and we are that is called recognized rules for nomenclature, and a procedure for verification irrespective of the group being examined. So a group of related organism to which a taxonomic name is given is called a taxon. In plural, it's called a taxa. So, which are the ranks of classifying? So, the goal of classifying is to place an organism into an already existing group to create a new group for it based on its resemblance to and differences from known forms. So, with this, we are going to have a hierarchy of categories which is already recognized. Okay. So, for example, like an ordinary flowering plant on the basis of growth structure is clearly one of the higher green plants, not a fungus, a bacterium, or animal, and it can easily be placed in the kingdom Plantae or metaphyta. So, if the body of the plant has distinct leaves, roots, a stem, and flowers, it is placed with the other true flowering plants in the division Magnoliophyta or Angiospermae, one category of the plantae. So, if it is like, for example, a lily with sword-like leaves, with the parts of the flowers in multiples of three, with one cotyledon, in the embryo, it belongs with other lilies and sages in a subgroup of the Magnoliophyta, which is called the class Liliaceae or monocotyledons. So in this class, it is placed rather than with orchids or grasses in a subgroup of the Liliaceae, the order Lilies. So this procedure is continued to the species level. So, if the plant is different from any lily yet known, a new species is named as well as higher taxa if necessary. So, if the plant is a new species within a well known genus, a new species name is simply added to the appropriate genus. So, if the plant is very different from any known monocot, it may require, even if only a single new species, the naming of a new genus, family, order, or higher taxon. So, there is no restriction on the number of forms in any particular group. So, the number of ranks that is recognized in a hierarchy is a matter of widely varying opinion. So, with this, you can see we have, like, for example, we have a domain, let's say, for example, eukaryota for animals and plants, eukaryota. For the kingdom, we are going to have in animals, we have kingdom Animalia, but in plants, we have kingdom Plantae. In phylum, animals, we have Chordata, In plants, we have Trichophyta. So in class, we have Mammalia, and in plants, we have Pterocida. In order, animals, we have primates. In plants, we have coniferals. In family, we have Hominidae. In plants, we have Pinaceae. In genus, we have animals being called Homo, and in plants, we have them being called Pinus. In species, animals, we are going to have them being called Homo sapiens, that is the modern man. And in plants, we are going to have, like, for example, the Pinus strobus, which is the white pine. So in botany, the term division is often used as an equivalent to the term phylum of zoology. So the number of ranks is expanded as necessary by using the prefixes like sub, super, and infra, e.g., subclass, superorder, and by adding other intermediate ranks such as brigade, cohort, section, or tribe. So given in full, the zoological hierarchy for the timberwolf of the Canadian, for example, subarctic would be, let's say, let's see what it will be. So we have to, it will be kingdom will be Animalia, subkingdom will be Metazoa, phylum will be Chordata, subphylum will be Vertebrata, superclass will be Tetrapoda, and in class we are going to have Mammalia, subclass we are going to have Theria. Infraclass, Eutheria, cohort, Farigulata, superorder, Ferae, order, Carnivora, suborder, Fisipeda, subfamily, Canoidea, and in family we are going to have Canidae. So subfamily Caninae, the tribe for this group is not yet described. Then the genus will be like Canis. Subgenus it has not been described, but species we are going to have Canis lupus, that is wolf, and subspecies we are going to have Canis lupus occidentalis, which is the northern timber wolf. So although the name of the species is binomial, it is the Canis lupus, and that of the subspecies trinomial, Canis lupus occidentalis for the northern timber wolf. All other names are single words. So in zoology, uh, convention dictates that the names of superfamilies end in oidea, and the code dictates that the names of families end in idae. So those of subfamilies in inai, and those in tribes in ini. So unfortunately, there are no widely accepted rules for other major divisions of living beings, because each group of animals and plants has its own taxonomic history, and old names tend to be preserved. So, apart from a few accepted endings, the names of groups of high ranks are not standardized and must be memorized. So, I hope we are together up to this point. Allow me go to the touch on a little on current systems of classification. So when you talk about current systems of classification, so we have division of organisms into kingdoms. So as long as only plants were those that grew fixed in one place, and all non-animals moved about and took in food, the greater groups of organisms were obvious. So even in the time of Linnaeus, who also was a theory of taxonomy. However, many biologists wondered about such animals, groups such as corals and sponges, which were fixed in position and in some ways even flower-like. So with these, we have had a more serious problem of classification with the invention of microscope, for example, and the discovery of microscopic forms of life. So it became apparent that many of microorganisms held both animal and plant characteristics and could not simply be classified in either kingdom. So, for example, the euglena is an unicellular organism with chlorophyll characteristics of a plant, yet uh, with such animal features as an eye spot and locomotion by means of flagella. So, some organisms are parasitic inside animals and ingest complicated materials as food, while related microorganisms obtain their nutrients through photosynthesis. So it has been proposed that the unicellular forms of microorganisms are going to be placed in a separate kingdom, that is the kingdom protista. So some biologists do not find this to be a happy solution. However, as some of the unicellular plants occur in colonies of various number of cells and may even have specialized reproductive cells. So during the in the mid, let's say 20th century, biologists recognized two vastly different cell types, prokaryote and eukaryote. So so from then we came the prokaryote and eukaryote and are based a division of the living and extinct world on these two broad categorizations. So these divisions were based primarily on the absence or presence respectively of a membrane bound nucleus containing the genetic material of the cells, as well as on the other organizational and structural features. So many classification of living organisms adopted such a division and further created two super kingdoms, that is the prokaryota and eukaryota. So within the prokaryota, we have the kingdom Monera, that is the bacteria, blue-green algae, and a recently described group of called the Archaebacteria, also known as Archaeobacteria. So the eukaryota, on the other hand, it comprised all other living living organisms. So what happens to viruses? So in essence, viruses are more difficult to classify. They are known only as parasites. No free living forms have been found. So they have a far simpler structure than bacteria and reproduce by injecting their hereditary material, which is either deoxyribonucleic acid or ribonucleic acid, but not both, into cells of other organisms. So, in effect, viruses utilize the host protein synthesizing mechanism to reproduce. So, the individual virus particles, that is the virion, therefore does not grow and divide by fission as bacteria do. So, some biologists have speculated that viruses are genes that have gotten out of control and become parasitic. Others have denied that viruses can be considered living at all. So many are highly important disease producers in plants, animals, and bacteria. So the principal characteristic shared by bacteria and viruses is that the hereditary material is not combined within a special nuclear membrane. Such a prokaryotic condition might be postulated by evolutionists as primitive when compared with forms with complex nucleus, as in eukaryotic organisms. So they now exist, may be simplest of living things, but it is not known how much they are modified from ancestral forms that are assumed not to have been parasitic and that were evidently only on the main line of evolution, nor is their relation to bacteria known. So another prokaryotic group is the blue-green algae, which is traditionally placed with other algae, that is the seaweeds, and studied more by botanists than by microbiologists. So the blue-green algae may be either unicellular or filamentous, and they behave like true plants, photosynthesizing in a way that resembles green plants rather than bacteria. So many more move by gliding, as do some bacteria and some true unicellular algae. So they are often extremely abundant around hot springs or at the edges of muddy ponds. And though they are resistant to harsh environments, blue-green algae are killed by many drugs. For example, antibiotics, which are used against bacteria. So with this, we also have another problem when it comes to the position of the fungi. So we have a large group of which include familiar forms such as mushrooms, toadstools, molds, and yeasts. So the fungi are eukaryotic. They lack chlorophyll. That is, they are not able to they cannot photosynthesize as green plants, and have rigid walls to the cells or filamentous that sometimes contain cellulose like the green plants. So some fungi walls or filaments are made of the chitin, the major constituents of the external exoskeleton of the of insects and other arthropods, or even other structural compounds. So a fungal cells usually contain many nuclei. So asexual and sexual spores are usually produced. Some produce motile spores with flagella, like the spores of some algae. So the sexual cycle is often very complex. Okay. So because fungi in general grow and produce fruit like ordinary plants, they have traditionally been included with them, but the differences between the fungi and the plants seem considerable. So with this, I would like to do a classification, a video on classification of living organism, where we will be talking about advances in biochemical and electron microscoping techniques, as well as in testing that they are which are used to investigate the genetic relatedness among species, and they have been predefined, which have redefined previously established taxonomic relationships